Hi, folks. I'm Rick Brusuelas, and along with the FSWA Hall-of-famer Greg Kellogg, we host the Sports Affiliation Thursday Checkdown. Our focus is on helping you be more successful in your fantasy football leagues and have fun because, as Greg always says, Greg, what do you say?
If it ain't fun, why do it?
Darn tootin'. And tonight's special guest is Jay Felicio of the Quarterback List and a contributor to The Athletic. Hey, Jay.
Hey, what's going on, Rick? Thank you guys for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we're psyched to
We're
have you.
excited to have you. It's not every day we get a Giants fan, really.
We've been in hiding for a while now, so we're starting to, as Jackson Dart looks pretty decent, we're coming out of the woodworks.
Yeah.
Well,
I was also,
Go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
I was also going to note that I know Jay through a Faith and Fantasy Twitter group and a league that we both play in. So I'm especially excited to finally get a chance to meet him, even if it's just virtual. So
it will be in person soon enough. We would definitely have to make that happen. But yeah, Rick, how long have you been in that group?
This is, I think, going to be my third year.
Okay.
And we keep doing well enough to get to the playoffs, but have yet to win it. So, and there's a really tough crowd of players in that league. You and Alfredo Brown, Pierre Wilson. I mean,
Cummings is in there. Shane Barrett.
Yeah,
some others.
Rachel Woodward. So we got some real good people in the group, and of course it spawns from a Twitter group where we've been pretty active in supporting each other and supporting others in the industry. So, hey everyone, thanks Tip for showing up, and we'll be
Jay,
seeing.
Who runs that league?
I honestly don't remember.
Do
you remember, Rick?
Question. I don't know either.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I run 2 leagues, and I've never given awards because they're free leagues, and I'm a cheap bastard. You know how that goes. But this year, I actually purchased nice little rings for the fantasy football champion of my 2 leagues. Yeah, we met the guy at the expo. We met the gentleman at the expo, Marcus Howard of Crowned Champions. Gina actually wore a crown with a robe on a throne. Gina Noble did, and that was set up by Marcus and his people. I got to say, customer service has been great. They mailed it to me. Yeah, you need to get these championship rings are cool. They really are.
I like that a lot.
And they don't take up all the shelf space for trophies and stuff.
Exactly. You just have to, do the Tom Brady and just have your whole handful of
them. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get to know Jay a little bit.
Behind me. Wait a minute. Before you get into that, he mentioned a name. And if you see behind me at that helmet up there, on the top of it, it's got Tom Brady's signature on it.
Not too shabby. At least it's a Michigan helmet, not a Patriots helmet. So I'll allow it.
Okay. And Greg, why don't you kick off by, letting folks know a little bit more about our guest?
Well, like you said, Jay writes for the Quarterback List and the Athletic. Now, I've heard of the Athletic. I'll be honest, I've never heard of the Quarterback List. I guess the Pitcher List, which is where the Quarterback List came from, is pretty well known in baseball circles. But I went out and I started looking at Jay's articles, and Jay, I'm impressed. I'm really, really impressed. I think you're really good. I'm going to be reading you a lot more, but do we want to start right in with the interview, Rick?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for those kind words. I truly appreciate that. That means a lot.
Well, we need to know more about you, Jay. So why don't you give us your background? Where do you live? Clearly, New York area, I'm guessing.
Originally,
what do you do outside of fantasy football?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from New York. I was born in New York. We moved to North Carolina when I was 4 years old. So I was born in New York, but raised in North Carolina. I'm aging myself a little bit here, but for about 35 years, I have my 20-year high school anniversary this year. So yeah, I've been down here almost my entire life. I still, sports has always been big in my family, and I followed in my dad's footsteps for his favorite team. So the Yankees, the Giants, unfortunately the Knicks, although they've, recent seasons they've been better, but it's been not been fun being a Knicks fan. But the only professional team that I did pick up here is the Carolina Hurricanes. I live about 20 minutes from their stadium, and it was the only professional team that I could actually realistically go see on a regular basis. So I've been a Hurricanes fan since they moved down from Hartford. I actually work for my local city. I do IT for my local city. So it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 type of thing. And 3 kids, 3 wonderful kids, a 9-year-old little girl, a 6-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old little girl. And whenever get them to bed, whether it's, as I told you guys earlier, wound up having to take my son to swim lessons earlier, and between swim lessons and cheer and everything else that they do, that's when they go to bed. I come in the office and take care of whatever I need to do.
There you go.
And I have 3 daughters. I did the same thing growing up, but I've got to ask you, when did you start playing fantasy football? How long you been doing this stuff?
I've been playing fantasy football for a long time. I started fantasy baseball first, but been playing since, I don't know the exact year, but somewhere in the late 90s is when I picked it up and started playing. So late 90s,
So
early 2000s.
let me ask you, did you play fantasy baseball or rotisserie baseball? And what's the difference? Because I never really understood that.
So I've done both. I started with fantasy. Rotisserie is fantasy, but it's, instead of going head to head with somebody on a weekly basis, it's everybody in the league is trying to get the most. It's basically the counting stats. So you'll have whatever statistics, just basic, we'll say 10. And if you have the most home runs, you get 10 points. If you have the second most home runs, you have 9, 8, and then it goes down from that in each category. So it basically totals up across the board, whoever has the best overall team. But it can get, it's its own animal. It's one of the, the backbones of fantasy as a whole, because that's one of the first ways that people started to play. But, if you can really, halfway through the season, especially baseball with the 162 games, you can get where you're out of reach and it's really not that fun. That's why I think it started to lend itself to going to the more head-to-head. And there's so many different formats with fantasy baseball.
So I know you and I play in a dynasty league, but what types of leagues do you play in? And is there a league type that is your favorite? Yeah,
so I would have to say Superflex is my favorite. My home league is and I know, and this might, some people might take this the wrong way. My favorite's Keeper, because it still has those dynasty elements, but the player pool gets refreshed every certain amount of years. And my home league is an auction keeper. So basically, the way it works, the first time you keep a guy, his cost goes up $5. The second time it goes 10, then 15, 20, and then it progresses. So if you're able to get a guy for dirt cheap, like I picked up Bucky Irving off the waiver wire, I got him for $5 this year. So I'll be able to keep him for 3, 4, 5 years at a relatively decent cost, but he'll still go back in the player pool eventually.
And running backs don't have longer than a 2 or 3 year span anyways.
Exactly. That'll probably be the most of his production anyways.
And I always ask this question, kind of get myself in trouble when I answer it. So I always like asking others is, how many leagues are you in currently?
I saw that, and I had to make sure that I didn't share this link with my wife, so she doesn't see this. She knows she's for years. She said when anybody asks her that, or if she asks, she said she doesn't even want to know. She said she doesn't care. Just she doesn't want to know. Right now, I've actually over the past couple of seasons, I've cut way back. I've done pretty well for leagues that I actively have to set a lineup. I'm actually under double digits for the first time. Probably 7-8 years. There was one point, especially around the pandemic, I think we all got league happy around that time. I was up close to 30 or so, and it was too much. It wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy it. So I really made a commitment to get down to under 10 leagues that I have to manage that way. And it's so much more fun doing it that way. And it stinks because I've had to turn down some people in joining leagues that I wanted to play with. But I'm really committed to staying under that 10. I would honestly like to get under 5 or 6 managed leagues. But that's going to be tough.
Yeah,
Well, I've been doing this a long time, and 5 is my limit right now. I'm in 5. But I got to ask you, you're with the quarterback list, as I said before. Tell us a little bit about that site, how often you write for it, and how you found it. Because like I said, I'd never heard of it before, and I saw some pretty good articles on there, including 2 of yours we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I truly do appreciate that. Yeah, so I just recently started with QB List in July. I came on as their lead analyst. They were, and as you mentioned, Greg, it's the sister site to Pitcher List. Nick Pollock, who's very well known in the fantasy baseball industry. The site has been going for a few years, QB List, and they haven't really necessarily put a huge push behind it. And the goal is they wanted to bring in a lead analyst, somebody who's going to be around for the long term, which is my plan. I've only been there 2 months, but I love it. Everybody there is just phenomenal. It really already feels like a family, and wanting to, everybody supporting each other and trying to grow the site. But during the season, I'm going to be doing Mondays. I'm going to have a kind of a recap article, like a quick hitter of the biggest things that happened on Sunday, and actually going to have a quick 15-minute podcast that publishes Monday morning to go along with that. But what I really like about about QB List is, for those of you that aren't familiar with Nick Pollock's work, he literally goes through and writes about every single player. He goes through, and there's blurbs on everybody, and that's why I mentioned to you I would like to hit on my top 300 players, because I went through and wrote at least something about, and most of them have pretty decent blurbs. When you get towards the end, there's some jokes in there and stuff like that, but wrote about 300 different players. And it's, I think that's what sets the site apart, is it's not just lists and ranks and things like that. It's we're going to give you, if you need to find some information about just about any player, that's the place to go. And one thing that really impressed me about the site too is we have a series called What We Saw, where we have a team of guys led by Brett Ford, who's amazing. And we literally have the entire team go through and watch the games and write what happened, what they saw. And it seems like a simple concept, but it's not just reading the box score, looking at highlights. It's these guys taking their time to really put their eyes on every single play and put in the work to give viewers and the audience something that they can go to, that they know that if they don't have time to go watch these games, somebody has, and somebody's put in the work.
Yeah.
Hey, now you also write for The Athletic, and The Athletic is not normally thought of as a fantasy site. So what kind of work are you doing for The Athletic?
So I've done some
how often do you contribute?
Yeah. So this offseason, I've done a couple different things. When it came to, we did a mock draft article, and all of us had to, it was me, Jake Seeley, Mike Hume, Brandon Funston, a bunch of other people. And we basically, we were able to draft 2 teams. It was 6 of us, and we drafted 2 teams. One, we could draft at our own will. And then the other, we had to follow some sort of strategy. So mine was, I had to go late quarterback, late tight end. This season, I actually won't be writing in season regularly. I'll have articles here and there, but one of the big responsibilities for me with The Athletic this season is we just launched a Discord, and I'm a moderator in the Discord, and I'll actually have 2 weekly chats. And on Sundays from 11 to 1, and then on Mondays on my lunch break from 12 to 1, I will be handling that chat as well. And we've got some great names in there: Andy Behrens, Dalton Del Don, Brad Evans, Jake Seeley. All throughout the week, there's chats literally every single day, I think, except Saturday. There's going to be some chats during the games, and it's open to all. You don't have to be a member of The Athletic to do it. And actually, Jake is how I got on with the QB List. Nick and Jake Seeley are good friends. Nick reached out to Jake and said, "Hey, we're looking for a lead analyst. You have anybody you could recommend?" And it just connected us, and did a couple of interviews, talked to Nick and Miles and the guys over there, and it was just a perfect match.
Now, I got to say, you drop some names there. Andy Behrens is a good friend. Brandon Funston, I've known since he was with Yahoo.
Oh, wow.
So these are people that Dale Don, these guys built the industry. They
Yeah.
really did. So you're in good company when you're writing with those. And I know Jake Seeley's name, but I've never really done anything with him. But one of the guys you mentioned, I met for the first time at the Expo this year, and he was part of the King's Classic auction draft. Brad
Uh-huh.
Evans is hilarious. Everybody in the King's Classic, these are all the experts of the experts, and they're all playing it cool. So when it's their turn to bid, I love auctions. I think that's
It's
the
my favorite.
best way to draft is an auction. And all these guys are going like this or like this to bid, right? Not Brad. 10, 15. I mean, he got
Oh,
excited
absolutely.
about it. I loved it. I really did.
That's the
And
fun of it.
he gave me a picture with him. Oh, yeah. And Abs was there, Michael Fabiano, and
Hey, Greg, you're breaking up and you're freezing on us.
but I did have one more question, and it's basically, when did you really decide you wanted to get involved in the fantasy industry? Because a lot of people start off just writing about the NFL, but to go into the fantasy, that's a very specific niche market of the NFL.
Yeah, so I actually just started out as a consumer just like anybody else. Probably around 2015, 2016 is when I stumbled across the fantasy football Twitter world, community, whatever you want to call it. And then I, I was one of those guys that was just in the chat. That's when I got close to Jake Seeley, Joe Pisapia, Chris Meany, when back in the FNTSY days when they had a show on there, and got close to those guys. And I have a business degree, but I originally was going to go for journalism. I've always loved to write. It's been a passion of mine since I was younger, and just kind of was at a point in my life where I was just looking for something to do, just kind of for fun. And my wife, my wife's the one who pushed me to do it. She's like, "You love fantasy football. You love to write. You're good at it. Why don't you put the two together?" And so I started around 2018 or so with Going for Two. Jeff Lambert over there, who is a great guy. He's given a lot of people in the industry a start, and just started writing over there just for fun a little bit. And actually, so I did it the first year that I did it. I wrote 2 articles, and I actually used a pseudonym because I was so worried about my league mates finding out the information of the guys who I wanted and stuff like that, because we do an auction league. So, if they were targeting the same guys as me, I wound up ghosting Jeff. I did 2 articles, and then my wife got pregnant and life kind of got crazy, and went back the next year to Jeff and just told him I apologized. I said, that's not the type of person I am. Just life got a little crazy, but I wanted to come back to you first. You gave me the shot. If you would like me to write for you this season, I would love to. If not, I completely understand. And he was awesome. He told me, don't apologize. Life happens. He said it happens all the time. Went on, wrote for them for a couple years. And then when the pandemic hit, it really, like a lot of others, took a step deeper into it, started taking on a larger role with Going for Two, editor-in-chief. Me and Dan Turner, who's in the industry. I'm not exactly sure where he's at these days, but started a podcast and just kind of went from there, and it snowballed. Picked up a lot of skills and a lot of friends around over the years, like video editor. I was with Front Yard Fantasy for a couple of years, where had a lot of fun with doing a fantasy football game show. And then it just kind of, jumped around a couple places, picked up, built up my resume, and wound up working with the 2 companies that I'm with now.
Awesome.
Well, my hat's off to your wife for allowing you to do that. My wife is very supportive, and I know Rick's got some questions for you now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're already past the Scott Fishbowl Live or Scott Fishbowl drafts, but I'm pretty sure that you and I have been in a couple of the Scott Fishbowl Twitter groups in the past as well. So did you get a chance to draft in this year's Scott Fishbowl, and did you draft in a live draft?
I did not get to do a live draft this year, unfortunately. Life was as I was telling you guys before we started, my kids getting older and getting more involved in sports with travel and stuff like that. Just didn't have the time to make a live draft this year. I actually hosted the Charlotte live draft last year, and it was a ton of fun. I had a lot of help from peaked in high school. Alex, he helped me basically run it, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without him last season. But it was a ton of fun. We actually, I took a shot in the dark. I was in a couple of years ago. I was in the same league as Shane Battier, and I'm a Duke fan, being in North Carolina. And I just shot him a DM, and I said, "Hey, we're having the Scott Fish Bowl. We're running an auction for Fantasy Cares. Would you be able to send a signed picture or something like that we can auction off?" I said, "I'm not keeping it for myself. It's all going to Fantasy Cares." He said, "I got some stuff for you. Don't worry about it." Sends a box. It's got 4 Oakley watches that are like over $800 each. It's got a signed jersey. I mean, all kinds of stuff. He was so incredibly gracious. And we raised, I think, like $4,000 or $5,000 or something like that. It was it was a lot of fun. I hate that I wasn't able to do it this year. I am in the Scott Fish Bowl. I am in the SC LSU Mud Dogs of the Waterboy fame. That's the division I'm in. I drafted online with good friend Steven Johnson. And I hope to go back to, whether it's hosting, whether it's just going, being involved some form or fashion in a live draft next year. And I actually, the highlight of it all was I got to go Toys for Tots shopping last season at the end of the year. And since I was a volunteer, they allowed me to do that. And my wife and kids went, and it was really cool to, give them that experience and explain to them that, we're truly blessed, and not every kid has what they have, and to be able to, and I was pleasantly surprised. Trust me, there was definitely some, "Hey, I want this too," but they were truly excited to buy for the less fortunate. And that really meant something to me.
I love the Battier story. He, as a Houston Rocket fan, one of my favorite players of all time, and seems like such a great guy. And the fact that he was so supportive of you and your efforts with the Scott Fish Bowl just makes it just more impressive. Sorry, Greg, shoot.
Have you met Scott?
Funny you say that. I
actually met Scott?
I have. I have a funny story about that too. It was the first expo that I went to. Scott was very close to us at Front Yard Fantasy. He's good friends with Joey Wright, who I'm good friends with as well, and JL Garofalo, Simon Grunewald. Scott was always very supportive of us over there in the chat, doing whatever he could. But the first fantasy football expo that I went to, I showed up, and I really, I never met 99.9% of these people in real life. And it was 2021, I think. So everybody had masks on and stuff like that. And I had a mask on, and as soon as I walked in, and I never want to be the guy that assumes people know who I am or anything like that. Like, I'm just a guy. I'm nobody special. Everybody is, everybody's just a person on this God's green earth. And I walked up, and Scott, and I put out my hand, and I said, "Hey, Scott, good to meet you." And I said, "Hey, Scott, Jay Felicio." And he like laughed. And then I went upstairs to the room, and he still razzes me to this day that he knew exactly who I was. And then I walked up and introduced myself. So every time I see Scott, he walks up, says, "Hey, I'm Jay Felicio." It's just a little running inside joke that we have. But yeah, I've got to spend some time with Scott, and I know I don't have to tell anybody this of how good of an individual he is.
He is. He welcomed me back after a 5-year absence from the hobby entirely. So Scott and Bob Lung both treated me like royalty. I just love both those guys to death. I met Rick at the Houston live draft, not this past year, but the year before last. And I met another co-host of mine, Tip Major, at the same draft.
It's good
this year, like you, life intervened, so I couldn't draft live. Next year, I've already talked to Scott. I'll be going to Dallas because my mentor, when I first got into the business, I used to be on the phone till 3 a.m, literally, with Bob Harris. So Bob Harris and I are really good friends from way back, and I want to go up and draft with him at the Scott Fish Bowl next
Bob
year.
is somebody who's become. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
No,
Bob is somebody who's become a bit of a mentor for me as well, and we both have very busy schedules, but we try to make it a point to hop on a phone call at least every few months and talk just about life and fantasy and everything in between. Bob was actually one of the first people when I was just getting started who just recognized me, and it was unreal. Like sometimes, like you said, to have all these people who are basically been the foundation for the industry, the Bob Harris's, the Andy Barons, and so many others, like to now consider them friends. Sometimes I
and
have to
they're
pinch
all
myself,
good people.
and it's
Jay, I'll tell
I'm
you
truly
a hint.
blessed to be. Yep,
I'll
absolutely.
tell you a secret about fantasy sports. Every industry in the world has good and bad people. Everyone. You can't avoid it because there's good and bad people everywhere. However, fantasy sports is so reputation based. If you're a bad person, in 3 years you're gone. It self cleanses. So anybody that's been in this industry for 5 years or more, good person. You just know they're a good person. And that's what I've found to be true, except for myself. Of course, I'm a jerk, but I can't help that. It's just who I am. Anyways, going back
I don't know
to
about that.
you.
I agree with
I,
yeah.
I want to get back to you. The first article I saw of yours was the Ultimate Draft Guide. I got to ask you, do you really think there's any such thing as an Ultimate Draft Guide?
So that's the thing. It's kind of a little bit of a misleading thing there, because in the article I mentioned, and I think it's how I play, and I think it's how most people can be successful. The best way to draft is to go in, everybody has their preference of how they like their team to be constructed. Myself, I tend to lean towards the hero RB roster construction. Get yourself a stud tight end, fill up the other positions, and then take a couple shots at running back later. But the best thing you can do is be able to adjust on the fly and have different roster constructions and be able to identify where the value is, where the teardrops are for different positions. And that's what I try to stress in that article. It's kind of like Matthew Berry's draft day manifesto kind of inspired type of thing, where it's not just these are the guys you want to draft in this order. Just gives examples of how important it is to make sure you take those shots on guys towards the end of the drafts instead of filling yourself with roster cloggers. One thing that I learned from Jake Seeley, and I have it in the article as well, is what he used to call the Greg Jennings rule. And towards the end of the draft, so often people get caught up on, okay, well, I need a tight end for this week. I need a backup wide receiver for this week by, and don't fill yourself up. That kind of dating myself as well with the Greg Jennings reference. I can't remember who I think I said Tyler Lockett was probably the new reference for this, but at the end of drafts, you're so much better off taking shots on those high upside guys. And I have a list of names that were drafted outside the 120 or were available on waiver wires that wound up being serious contributors to fantasy teams last season.
Bucky Irving. It's just
Bucky Irving's one of them. Absolutely.
You stated that you don't believe the old adage that there's an old adage that I've said for years. You can't win your league in the first round, but you can lose it. You don't believe in that. I disagree with you a little bit on that point, in that I agree with you that leagues are won by managing your teams. That's a big point you made in that article, and I do agree with that. But don't you think that some people, especially newer fantasy players who screw up their first round, get frustrated and then don't manage their teams?
Absolutely. You make a great point there, and I'll have to in next season's Ultimate Draft Guide, I'll have to drop that mention in there as well. But and the point I was trying to make, and it sounds like you agree with it as well, is even if they do, if if they're active, if continuously looking on the waiver wire, you can overcome those. There's certainly was people last year that drafted Christian McCaffrey in the first round and still went on to win their leagues because they were active. picking up those Bucky Irvings, the Jordan Masons, guys like that. So I'm with you 100%. I get exactly what you're saying. But that's why it's important for the people that aren't obsessed with it like we are and think about it constantly year round. A lot of this stuff comes second nature to us because we've been doing it for so long and playing for so long. But those kind of, I called it the fundamentals. And I was really struggling with the wording of how I wanted to say that, because, that comes off kind of arrogant or, trying to say that, oh, these are the basics that you have to know. And it was more of just some thought processes, how to play that will put you in the best position to consistently win. There's so much luck in fantasy sports. It's insane. You can do all the right things. You can make all the right calls.
Luck!
And then, oh man, I will never forget. I'll tell you a quick story. In my home league, semifinals, probably 2016 or so. I had LaShawn McCoy on the Eagles. That's how long ago it was. And Chip Kelly decided that he wanted to give goal line carries to Chris Polk and Darren Sproles. So I lost 3 touchdowns, 2 to Chris Polk, 1 to Darren Sproles. And I lost my semifinals matchup by 5 points. So it's not that it scarred me or anything like that, that I remember exactly where I was standing in my living room when those touchdowns happened. But it's just an example of anything can happen.
But do you remember what you said when those touchdowns happened?
Yeah, and I had
can
to
you
ask
repeat it
for
in an open
forgiveness
forum?
for God for using that kind of language.
Well, and I think, is it more true to say that it requires a balance, or it needs, the manager to focus both on draft as well as on waivers and trading, if it's a league that allows trading, that the proper balance is what leads to success, not saying, gee, I have to you just nail the draft, or gee, I have to be super aggressive on waivers.
Yeah, I would probably lean a little more, I'd say probably 60-40, more towards the waivers and management side. The drafting is obviously important, but it's you've got to set yourself up with a good foundation and roster construction. And, you look at the preseason ADP for any year and you look at the end of season rankings, and they're nowhere near the same. I mentioned in my article that the top from 2023 to 2024, the ADPs of the top 12 guys, 50% didn't finish inside the top 12. So that's, a pretty significant number that isn't going to be there. And that's where the team management and working the waivers and trades is so important. And one of the big things, and I mentioned it in the article as well, and something that I've tried to stress to people over the years, when it comes to trading, so many people feel like they have to win or they have to squeeze out every last little, okay, we'll throw in this guy or throw in a 3rd round pick or something like that. You put yourself in such a better position if you develop good trade relationships inside your leagues. When people knows, like, hey, you know what, I know I can go to Rick and he's not gonna try to, milk me for every single dime that I have. You look for teams that have a strength that is your weakness and find something that's going to work for both of you. Like, obviously you don't want to set up your opponents to win, but you want to do something, make the moves that are going to improve your team, but you don't have to just destroy everybody in a trade, because you do that once or twice and nobody's going to want to trade with you.
Yeah, I like that, especially in a dynasty league, because it is that relationship, and sure, you might, quote, win a trade, but then you may spoil your reputation with either the other player or maybe even the entire league. And there's leagues that I'm in where people just refuse to do trades with 1 or 2 players because they know that person's sending over, ridiculously one-sided trade offers, and, or they're just difficult to work with. I'd rather be the type that maybe even offers an early trade if I just enter a league, or if there's new people in the league. I might offer a small trade just to get conversations going.
Yeah.
And if I quote, don't win that trade, maybe down the road, I'll be able to, affect a much bigger trade that, helps me win and also hopefully helps the other team as well.
Yeah, I've actually
Yeah, I
had
think
one
that's
dynasty league that I'm in. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rick.
I was going to say, I think that's outstanding advice that you gave is win-win. Tends to allow you to trade when you really need to trade.
Absolutely. And what I was going to mention too is I have one guy. Will not reveal his name, but there's one dynasty league that I've been in for about 6 years now, and we've probably made 15 or so trades, and we've gotten to the point in our trade relationship where even if there's a trade that I feel like I need just a little bit more, we'll go, okay, you know what? Next time it's something close like this and you're not quite sure, I'll be the one to bite the bullet. And we've just got that relationship where even, not like collusion or anything like that, but just we're at the point where we know that we have that relationship. We trust each other. We know that we're not going to try to, pull anything on the other guy, and be able to do things like that is such a huge advantage that people who ruin their reputation, lose on one avenue of improving their team.
Now, there's a lot of different draft strategies. When I got started in this, it was stud running back. Everybody wanted 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds.
Yep.
I'm with you now. I like hero running back. Get a running back in the first or second round, one you can depend on. I always go best player available in the first 2 rounds. I just do. But if the best player, there's tiers. And if there's 2 players in the same tier, one's a wide receiver and one's a running back, I'm going to go with the one I didn't get in the first round so that I can balance my team out. Now, like tight ends, and I got to say, when Kelsey was scoring 60 points more than the second tight end, I was all aboard getting Kelsey early, first round even early. But now there's 5 or 6 tight ends that legitimately could be tight end 1 at the end of the year and are all going to score within 25 points of each other at the end of the year. So I'm waiting late. You seem to want to take one in the 3rd or 4th round.
Well, there's only one that I'd be willing to do that, and that's George Kittle this year. I'm generally like you. I like to wait on tight end because there's so much turnover at the top of the at the top of the tight end standings at the end of the season. You look at Sam Laporta last year; he was being drafted among the first 2 or 3 tight ends, and where he wound up finishing, and it feels like there's always
top 10. He's my Detroit boy, still top 10.
Right. Oh, he was good, but he wasn't worth where he was being drafted. And that's the thing.
Right. I agree.
The opportunity cost of drafting one of these guys. And that's why the only league I have Trey McBride in is my home league because I got to keep him for cheap. But when you're burning that first on Brock Bowers or the second on Trey McBride, you're missing out on that elite talent at the other positions. But like you said, George Kittle, if you can get him at the end of the 3rd, beginning of the 4th, that's when I'm okay, you know what? Maybe I will take that shot. It depends on who's available on the board. But with all the losses that the 49ers have had on defense, all the injuries they have at receiver, I think George Kittle has just as good of a shot as the other guys. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, anybody else is finishing as the tight end 1. And at that price range, I'm more than happy to take a shot. It's like I said, other than that, I would generally play it like you said, Greg, kind of like a late round quarterback, whether it's taking 2 high upside guys or a high upside guy and a little bit of a safer one to pair him with, which those are few and far between at the tight end position. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm more of I like to wait on tight end, but I'm willing to adapt the way that I play based on the value on the board. And that's where I'm at with George Kittle.
I like Laporta again this year. I like TJ Hawkinson, but I really like Evan Ingram this year. I think Evan Ingram in Denver is going to be very good, especially who is their second wide receiver? I mean, we know Cortland Sutton, but who's second? I mean, they just shipped Ville out to Minnesota. So I
Marvin
don't know who their
Mims,
second receiver is. Is it Marvin Mims? He's the highest paid guy on the roster,
right?
but that doesn't mean he's going to be the second in targets. I think Ingram is going to be huge, and he's got the speed of a slow wide receiver. He's a very fast tight end, very
Absolutely.
athletic tight end, and I love Bo Nix. But what do you think of Ingram? Strange. I like Strange where he's at now.
Absolutely. I love
Um,
that.
what do you think of these guys? Do you think that they're worth waiting on?
Absolutely. And I think Strange is another guy too that isn't getting enough credit. I actually had him as one of my targets this season because the second target in Jacksonville is going to be Travis Hunter, but he's not going to play a full allotment of snaps that your normal wide receiver two would play
Time out.
because he's going
Time
to
out.
play.
I want to mention something about Travis Hunter
Sure.
that I just read from local news writers. They're expecting Travis Hunter to play 80% of snaps. Now, that's not 80% of offense or 80% of defense. That's 80% of all snaps. They expect
Ooh.
him to have a full load on defense. They expect him to play defense because they love him at cornerback. He's going to be their starting corner. And then he's going to play offense. So, frankly, I don't think the kid can withstand that much usage. Personally, I don't. You look at the last two-way players was Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders, and they didn't play hardly at all on one side of the ball. So I, I don't see it. Do you really see him playing that much?
I hope I'm wrong, but I'm with you. I think that it's going to take a toll, especially how physical the game is now. Not that it wasn't then, but his body composition isn't necessarily built to withstand that type of. Look at Bo Jackson. That's a guy that you could say, hey, if he wants to play 100% of snaps, Bo Jackson could play 100% of snaps and then go and hit a home run for the Kansas City Royals. But no, I'm with you. I think that's going to go down at one side or the other. Maybe not this year, but I don't think he's going to be long for playing 100% on defense and such a significant amount on offense. So we could very well be wrong. I've been wrong on Derrick Henry for the past couple of years, falling off that age cliff and that carry cliff. That some guys are just outliers, and I don't think he will be, but he's got the talent. He's shown that he's capable.
Yeah. Now you said that you prefer hero running back, which means you're going to get a running back in the first two rounds. But you've also said you prefer to go for high upside guys late. Now, I will occasionally take a handcuff. Like if I've got Kyron Williams as my starting running back, I'm not opposed to, in the very last round, picking up Blake Corum. Because if Kyron goes down, Blake Corum is now in a position to be a star running back. I think he's got the talent. He's certainly got the speed and the pedigree at Michigan to be very good. But he's got to get the opportunities or it's not going to matter. Do you have specific roster constructions that you go for, like 2 quarterbacks, 3 quarterbacks, or do you just play it by ear on every draft?
I kind of have what I generally like to do as a general theme. Like I said, I like to have the early running backs. I like to have at least one stunt tight end. I like to load my bench up with generally rookies or second-year players. One thing that I do that I actually differ from you, Greg, and I understand what you're saying. I've done that over the years as well. I prefer not to go for my running backs handcuffs. I feel like it somewhat caps your ceiling. It's definitely the much safer play, but as over the past couple of seasons, I've started to go no risk it, no biscuit, take some more gambles, and prefer to have handcuffs from other running backs. That way, if they hit, then you've got yourself an additional running back to boost your team. Now, it does make me vulnerable for if my guy goes down and I don't have a running back that hits, then I'm shopping on the waiver wire for whoever I can find. But what I like to do is load up my bench with high upside, generally younger guys, rookies, guys that could step right in. And I love post hype sleepers. Like it's my favorite thing because everybody is so knee jerk reactions. If a guy doesn't have an Odell Beckham, Justin Jefferson type of rookie season. They're just ready to give up on him and onto the new big name. And, I'm excited about Trey Benson this year. I think he's got a really good opportunity to become the running back to roster in Arizona. There's even, I'm still not out on Marvin Harrison Jr. and I'll actually have him on some teams this year because you don't have to pay the
Marvin Harrison
ridiculous price
Jr.
last year.
Marvin Harrison Jr. put up better numbers than his father did, and his father's a Hall of Famer. Okay. So people don't realize it. We always used to think, you and I are old enough to remember this, wide receivers break out in year 2 or 3. They do not break out in year 1. They just don't. Malik Neighbors and Chase, they're unicorns. You just don't have year
Outliers.
1 breakouts like that typically. Running backs can break out in the first year. And typically, if they don't break out by their second year, they're not going to. But tight ends and wide receivers and quarterbacks aren't generally first-year superstars. You just don't see that very often. So I know that Rick wants to know, are you avoiding any players this year?
There is. I'm generally one of those that will never say never, depending on where you're able to get them. They become a value at some point in drafts. There are 2 guys that I am avoiding, and I've gotten a lot of flack on this first one. Aaron Jones, running back for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm just considering his age, his inefficiency last season, coming off a career high in touches, and the Vikings going out, trading for Jordan Mason. As good as Jordan Mason looked last year, I think that it's only a matter of time before he overtakes that backfield. And I'm not interested. I know Aaron Jones is probably going to start the season on the heavier side of the committee, but he's not going to get the goal line work. He actually had, I believe it was 12 carries inside the 5 last year and wound up with -2 yards. So he was not too good on the goal line. Jordan Mason, what's that?
How many touchdowns did he get on those 12 carries?
That I will have to double check. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but he definitely had some touchdowns and some work in the passing game. I'm not willing to where you have to draft him. The upside is limited.
But are you drafting Mason?
Oh yes, Mason's one of my favorite running backs this season. I don't have him in as many places as I would like because the leagues that I'm in, people know how much I love him, and they're going and taking him ahead of me. But yeah, I'm all for Jordan Mason. I think that he's, especially in leagues that are your more general player that may not be as in tune with some of these things. Look on the waiver wire, because I would not be surprised if Aaron Jones starts the season better off than Jordan Mason, and people get frustrated and drop them. Same thing with a lot of rookie running backs when they don't start the season 20 points per game. And Aaron Jones, and the other one is Chris Godwin. And it hurts because Chris Godwin has been one of my favorite NFL players over the past 5, 6, 7 years. He helped me win 2 championships in my home league, holds a special place in my heart. But, considering his age and the type of injury that he's coming back from, there's not a lot of wide receivers that have had success coming off of an ankle injury, especially at this age.
He was activated, though. He was taken off the
but he's activated. They're not going to use him, though. In fact,
no, they're not.
They brought out more information about his injuries. He had more than just what they had originally reported. So, I think Jay's 100%. And it's funny because I've only drafted Aaron Jones once this year. And it was a league where I really did need a starting running back, but I was also very quick to make sure. And I also agree 100% that I don't normally go out and get my own handcuff. I'd rather get the handcuff of someone else so that when that player is gone, my opponent is hurt. Plus I've got the starting player added to my own starting lineup. So, and I know that I think Jeff Manns is one of the biggest proponents of you got to handcuff your own running back. I don't agree. But in this one instance, I did get Jordan Mason with the idea that at some point Jordan Mason's taking over that backfield, and I'll continue to have a strong starter in my lineup. So completely agree there. It's funny also with the idea that especially in dynasty, running backs have a shorter shelf life. We found last year, though, that the wide receivers were also getting hurt, and we're seeing injuries already this year. And so I guess we're going to have to be more flexible this year, and not just draft based on, the running back is the
But Rick, Jay wrote an article on 300. I mean, Sal Vetri gives away his top 50. Top 50 is 4 rounds, buddy. If you don't know who you're drafting the first 4 rounds, you need a lot more help than we're going to give you. But 300 players, and I know, Rick, you got some questions about the top 300.
Well, in fact, why don't we dive into that? And, again, we've talked a little bit about the Ultimate Draft Guide, but, Jay, you've just done this great article about the top 300. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about the work that went into that, and then some of the things that some of the insights that you can share with people in our audience.
Yeah. So the week before that, the top 300 came out, I went through and did my positional rankings, and I tried to stress, and it's hard to it's hard to get some things across in writing versus, being able to explain it to somebody. I really focus, and Greg, you touched on this earlier, the tiers is what matters to me. If there's a guy that's in the same tier, one's ranked 10th, one's ranked 18th, there's not that much difference. And the way that I personally do rankings is when I have them in tiers, I rank them based on, okay, I'm on the clock. Where would I take this guy? Would I take this guy over? Would I take Dak Prescott over Brock Purdy? Or that's how I run through. So it's not necessarily the conventional way. I take everything into consideration when I'm doing that. The top 300 basically takes all of those and combines them into one. And I did throw some kickers and defenses in there at the end. And there's a couple of fun Easter eggs mixed in there. And I wanted to, and one of the things that I love about pitcher list, QB list is with 300 names, defenses, whatever, if somebody wants just a little information on just about anybody that could possibly be drafted, I've got something for you, and at least considered where they're at. And I'm going to come out probably, I think, next week with my version 2 adjusted based on some of the things that have happened and new information. But we've got it set up where you can go based on position, top 300, and it goes down and breaks them down into tiers. And then inside those tiers, it's got multi-positional rankings. And it's the biggest thing I want to stress is if you look at guys that are, they could be 5-6 spots apart, they're in the same tier, there's really not that much difference. We're just splitting hairs. It's just taking into consideration risk, acquisition cost, their upside, their floor, things like that, and just kind of putting it all in a neat little bow.
And the great thing about doing tiering as opposed to rankings and going by tiers versus ranks, you're in a draft, all of a sudden that player you've just been salivating is marching his way down the draft list, and then boom, sniped. If you're smart and you approach it by a tier as opposed to individual rankings, you just grab the next guy in the tier and you're just as happy. You're still good to go. And yeah, the difference between players within a tier is so minimal that it shouldn't impact your team's success at all. So I love the advice on going with tiering.
Well, I love the fact that he's got blurbs on just about every player in that 300 list. Now, you got a 12-team league with 20 roster spots. That's only 240 players. So you've covered more than enough. But I got to take exception with your Mr. Irrelevant. I really do now. Right. Yeah, you went in there and you said, Frank Gore Sr. or Jr. both have about the same chance of contributing to your fantasy squad. Wait a minute, with all the injuries in San Francisco, they may have to reactivate Frank Gore Sr. He could
That's
be a
very
viable
true.
choice there, don't you think?
Yeah, and you know what? If there's plenty of Niner fans that can just dust off that old Frank Gore jersey and throw it on, you're 100% right. And honestly, I'd probably take a shot and pick him up.
And it isn't just running backs; their wide receivers are starting to fall. In fact, they just traded with the Kansas City Chiefs to get Sky Moore, who already is looking like he might be, someone who will be early off the bench, if not even one of the starters. So that's and it was funny. We didn't get a chance to talk through the news, but there was another trade that came up where and we mentioned the Denver Broncos, but the New Orleans Saints traded for Devon Valley from the Broncos, who probably, I think he's a great wide receiver. I think that he's going to, be able to contribute at New Orleans Saints. But the Saints gave up a fourth and a seventh when the Kansas City Chiefs did a pick swap, a late round pick swap with the 49ers. So the 49ers
Sixth or seventh, yeah.
Yeah. It was a much better, value for a player who probably isn't that much different than Devon Valley. And so,
I want to know what Jay thinks. He's got Valley as wide receiver 100 right now. I want to know how far up he's moving him, because now that he's in New Orleans, he could be a starter. He could very well be a starter on that team.
I don't even know if
LQ, that's my guy. Yeah, I love LQ. He's one of the most genuine people I've met in this space. And obviously he likes Valet, but I don't know yet. I haven't had a chance to sit down and really think it through. It really depends on, it's kind of the easy way out, but it really depends on who winds up being the quarterback. And for fantasy purposes, I'd rather see Chuck in there. Because
Spencer Rattler, I think, has already been announced.
Oh, did they announce Rattler now?
I think it's Rattler's been announced already. Yeah.
Yeah. Then
I think it's going to be Rattler, but Schuff does have a strong arm, very strong arm.
And I think based on where they're being drafted to, I actually have a fair amount of both Rashid Shaheed and especially Chris Olave. People are just writing him off, and he's the type of talent. No matter who's back there at quarterback, he's going to be able to put up numbers if he's able to stay on the field. Hopefully, he's over his concussion issues. I'll have to look with. He probably, honestly, all things considered, he'll probably say somewhere close to where he's at, just because it's such a downgrade in situation from a team perspective.
And I think he's still going to be coming off the bench, because I think between Olave, Shaheed, and I think Cooks is the wide receiver 3 there.
I forgot. Brandon Cooks went back to
we got a fan of Jay's here in the audience, Joey Wright. How dare you? How dare you? What? How dare you? What? He's got to be more specific.
A super fan. Yeah, he's definitely not. Joey's even though he puts on this front, he's not actually. No, I'm just playing. Joey's one of my closest friends who I text on nearly daily basis, but he has a terrible taste in bagels. Just don't even, if you ever anywhere around him getting some food, don't take his recommendations. We went to New York. We've gone to New York for Flex the past couple of years, and go to New York, you get a bagel. And we went to the New York Best Bagel Shop, and I got your classic everything bagel, bacon, egg, and cheese. Joey gets Nutella, cream cheese, and strawberry monstrosity or something.
Oh, no.
I'm happy for Joey that he enjoys it and that he loves it.
Strawberries are good for you.
They are, but not on a bagel. I don't know. Yeah, but I do. I love Joey too. He's somebody who I consider pretty much family.
Yeah, I saw Laquan's comment a little earlier about Valet being better than Kyle Williams and Jaden Higgins. So that's an interesting.
He is.
Ooh, he is. Higgins? I don't know about the Higgins.
I don't know about Jaden Higgins. I'm a Texan fan, so of course I guess hometowning it, but I don't know about that.
Kyle Williams,
Laquan, you're right. Stick to your guns.
Yeah, Jaden
and
Higgins.
I'll tell you what, LQ, I give LQ credit. Him and I were talking earlier in this season, off season, both him and I were kind of in on Daniel Jones as a potential sleeper for Superflex leagues. Sleeper is the wrong term, more of a low risk, high reward dart throw. Just considering.
I called Daniel Jones last week before the announcement was made. He's just more efficient throwing the ball, and quarterbacks generally get paid to throw the ball, not run the ball. So I think he upgrades. I think he upgrades the entire receiving core, and I think he upgrades Jonathan Taylor because you have a viable pass threat now.
Yeah.
And he likes to dump the ball off. We saw that with Saquon Barkley. That could really shoot up his value in PPR leagues.
Yeah. Also, there might be the question of whether or not.
So, Rick, I hate to cut this short, but you need to take us home because we're over an hour already. Jay, this has been great. We got to get you back on again when we got more time for you.
I would love to. It flew by. Thank you guys so much for having me.
And next week, we're going to have Alfredo Brown from the Football Guys as our guest. So please keep an eye out for that. And also keep an eye out for all the other great shows on the Sports Affiliation. So with that, we'll say thanks again to Jay. Hey, Jay, why don't you remind folks where people can find you?
Find me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called these days, @GmenJ. You can find most of my content at QBlist.com. And over at The Athletic, we'll have some stuff as well as the Athletic Discord.
Great. Appreciate it. And we'll be looking for you. And again, thanks for all the folks that were in the chat and all the people that watched. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. And we'll take it out of here now.
Like and subscribe, folks. Like and subscribe.